But we don't know yet what to expect when it comes to Woody Harrelson's take on Cletus Kasady and Carnage in the Venom sequel, Let There Be Carnage. We can prepare for the film by taking a look back at some of the more powerful versions of the character that we've seen thus far from the comics and the animated series. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. This is Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, and it is time to count down the top 10 most powerful alternate versions of Carnage. Let's get into it. Number 10. Carnage, Earth 7642. This alternate version of Carnage comes to us from the Spider-Man and Batman team-up comic. He hails from Earth 7642, an alternate Earth where New York City's Spidey and his foes and Gotham City's Batman and his foes both coexist. Carnage in this reality was cured of his insanity, violent, and homicidal tendencies by being implanted with an inhibitor chip. However, this chip was disabled by his symbiote, returning him to normal. Escaping captivity, he managed to successfully kidnap Joker, who also had an inhibitor chip, keeping him sane. Cletus disabled Joker's chip and proposed a team-up, but the two villains unfortunately couldn't agree on a method when it came to how to terrorize. Joker wanted something more elaborate in a scheme, whereas Carnage just wanted, well, Carnage. In the end, Carnage was defeated in an interesting turn of events by the uncoordinated efforts of both Joker and Batman. Number 9. Carnage, Earth 311. Carnage of Earth 311 was known by the name Cletus Kasady. He claimed to be possessed not by a symbiote but by what he referred to as a demon. Earth 311 is the reality belonging to Marvel's 1602 universe created by Neil Gaiman. This alternate version of Carnage, however, was not a creation of Mr. Gaiman himself, but instead was created by Mike Costa and David Baldione, making his first appearance as a side character in one of the stories included in 2015's The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. In fact, I think that's his only appearance thus far. He was the leader of the Sinister Sextet, who were admittedly pretty handily defeated by the Web Warriors in said story. However, it should be noted that the Sinister Sextet therefore went up against not one Spider-Man, woman, or totem, but instead 5 of them. Number 8. Carnage, Earth 1610. Carnage in the Ultimate Universe has no attachment to its usual host Cletus Kasady. The symbiote is not alien in origin, but instead, like Venom in this universe, was created in a lab. The creature was made out of samples left over from Richard Parker's experiments, combined with Peter's unique DNA. Carnage, when unleashed, would end up being a monster who ultimately killed Gwen Stacy due to it possessing fragments of Peter's memories. It needs to consume humans in order to survive in the beginning, but otherwise had powers similar to its 616 counterpart. It could shapeshift and was considered to be immensely strong. However, it also possesses a unique ability as well. It was able in essence to recreate the deceased Gwen Stacy, producing a clone of her. This clone was permanently bonded to the symbiote and herself would become known as Carnage. The only downside as well was that as clone Gwen was frightened of Carnage, her powers were unstable and unpredictable. The good news is though, Carnage when bonded with Gwen basically didn't need to eat humans anymore for some reason, so yay! And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Carnage lists as we prepare for this movie, which is coming out at the end of the month, at the beginning of October, I am so excited! Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And let us know in the comments if you're excited about Let There Be Carnage. I'm excited. I have faith in Woody Harrelson, so I'm pretty excited about it. Number 7. Superior Carnage. This version of Carnage came about when the symbiote was forcefully separated from a currently brain-dead Cletus Kasady by the Wizard. The symbiote refused to surrender to the Wizard's will, and so he had to remove the symbiote via blood transfusion, giving the blood to another unwilling participant, his ally Dr. Carlin Malice. Dr. Malice then became Carnage against his own wishes and became Wizard's loyal pet of sorts, making the Wizard's new Frightful Four pretty powerful, which of course is what he intended. That is of course until he lost control of Carnage, who ended up bonding with the Wizard instead, which also the Wizard was not down for, but that's how Carnage do sometimes. In the end, Superior Carnage would end up returning to Cletus once more, who was thought of as dead at this point, but it was revealed that he actually had survived an explosion that he was in, but was just really badly burnt. Because Cletus Kasady is pretty much impossible to kill, apparently. Even when he's dead, he's probably not dead. Number 6. Red Goblin. Red Goblin might not have additional powers like some of the other alternates on this list, but he does add additional psychopathic tendencies, not that Carnage needed any more of those, and smarts. Red Goblin Goblin is what you get when you put two of Spider-Man's main arch nemeses, Norman Osborn and Carnage, together. And boy, is he really ruthless. This gave us a version of the symbiote who almost got Peter Parker to quit being Spider-Man in order to protect his loved ones against Red Goblin. Red Goblin basically threatened to devour said allies and family members of Peter if he did not revoke the Spider-Man mantle. And if you can believe it, Peter agreed. However, Peter did not stop fighting. He just did so not as Spider-Man, but instead as Peter. So he was like, I'm not gonna do it. And everyone was like, oh! And then the next issue he was like, I'm gonna do it as Peter, it's fine. Though of course, even as Peter Parker, he still had superpowers and he called in backup to help. I think he just wasn't wearing his mask, he may have even still been wearing his Spider-Man suit. I mean, with someone like Red Goblin, you're also gonna need all that help, so it's probably good that he called in the cavalry, if you will. Norman's time as Red Goblin ended up driving him even more crazy, and in the end left Norman thinking he was actually Cletus Kasady. For a while. I think he's back to normal now. Pretty sure he's back to normal now. I mean, normal. What is normal for Norman? Number 5 is Spider-Carnage Earth 616. While in the animated Spider-Man series we had a character who also went by this name, in the comics it was a different host entirely who went as Spider-Carnage, Ben Reilly. Spider-Carnage was the name that the symbiote took when it bonded with Ben Reilly after temporarily being bonded to John Jameson. However, this was all just a ruse. The symbiote didn't really want to actually be attached to Jameson, but instead wanted to find a host worthy of it. As soon as it seemed Ben was defeating John as Carnage, the symbiote jumped onto him. Even though John was trying to warn him, he's like, don't fight me, it's a trap. Ben Reilly tried to resist but failed and temporarily became the now superpowered and symbiotic character known as Spider-Carnage. This all went down in Amazing Spider-Man issue 410 of the original volume. However, this was the peak of 90s Spider-Man, so you'd have to move over to the just Spider-Man series to continue his story, because that's how it was back then. There were so many Spider-Man comics. They were like, read this issue, then read this other series, then read the other series, and you were like, what's happening? Number 4, Bizarnage. Bizarnage is the amalgam version of Carnage who is seemingly combined with Bizarro in this universe. Bizarnage is Project Cadmus's attempt to recreate alien DNA. Sound familiar? Unfortunately, it didn't go as smoothly as planned, and instead they ended up creating the crystalline monster known as Bizarnage. Bizarnage possesses the powers of Carnage vs 616 and can bond with other beings. It also is quite adept at evading attacks and possesses hyper intelligence. Bizarnage is a foe of Spider-Boy, himself a combination of Spider-Man and Superboy. Spider-Man from Marvel, Superboy from DC. Number 3. Carnage, Earth 20143. This alternate version of Carnage gave Spider-Bam some massive trouble back in 2019 Spider-Verse in issue number 2. She also happened to act as Spider-Man's evil alter ego, as she herself, instead of becoming an alternate version of Spider-Man, became an alternate version of villain Carnage. Woo. Carnage of Earth 20143 is also an alternate version of Aunt May. Instead of just being a kind, charitable, sweet, yet no-nonsense caregiver or hero, she becomes instead a ruthless and heartless villain who believed free will did not exist and aimed to destroy all of her counterparts throughout the multiverse, as well as the counterparts of her allies. She fought alongside likewise evil yet non-super versions of her nephew Peter and her husband Ben, as well as an evil version of Miles Morales from her reality, who is still Miles Morales, so I believe he still had powers. Spider-Man had to harness the power of all of her superpowered alternates using the power of love from across the multiverse in order to defeat this Carnage. It was pretty intense, and we got to see a lot of alternate, I guess, Spider-Mams. There's like a Spider-Gwen, there's like a Venom, it's crazy. Number 2, Spider-Carnage Animated. Definitely one of the most horrifying versions of Carnage out there as well. This version of Carnage comes to us from Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 90s. He is an alternate reality version of Peter Parker who lost both his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, oh no, causing him to go to a very dark place. In his own reality, he would later bond with Carnage, who had entered his Earth through an interdimensional portal. Due to all the tragedy that he'd suffered, Peter as Spider-Carnage became corrupted and set out to destroy all of reality. Once foiled, he headed to another reality to try again, but this time was redeemed by the main animated continuity Spider-Man, who teamed up with a still-alive alternate reality version of Uncle Ben. Together they were able to reach out, reawaken, and remind Spider-Carnage of the goodness still inside him. Unable to rid himself of the symbiote, however, Spider-Carnage opted to sacrifice himself in order to ensure everyone's safety. Number 1. Carnage Cosmic. In the reality verse 616, Nor and Rad ended up coming into contact with the Carnage symbiote, who bonded to him, abandoning his host Cletus Kasady. But in Marvel's What If Volume 2, issue 108, it all goes down a little bit differently. Instead of the symbiote returning to Cletus, in this What If reality of Earth 985, Carnage remained bonded to the Silver Surfer, permanently becoming the Carnage Cosmic. Sort of permanently anyways. So not only does this version of Carnage have all the power it usually possesses as a symbiote and child of Venom, but it also has access to the Silver Surfer's power cosmic as well. Of course, in the end, this version of Carnage is defeated, but only when Silver Surfer manages to regain some control long enough to fly himself and the symbiote, now permanently bonded with him, into the sun. Cry a little tear for Carnage Cosmic. Who are some of your favorite Carnage alternates? Which version of Carnage do you think is the most powerful? Where do you think the newest version of Carnage from Venom Let There Be Carnage will rank on this list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I am your host Amanda McKnight. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.